welcome to this. It's I was gonna do Your Turn to Die today, but I updated my OBS, and so I got like 20 minutes into recording it, and I'm like, oh, I bet it's not working, and yeah, it wasn't working. So I have to go back and play another segment again because it's so nice. So instead, we're just gonna do this. I do this every year anyway. This is my best of 2022. And we're going to start with animation. Now, this is my 2022, so a lot of these shows did not come out this year. In fact, I think there's only... Did Bee and Puppy Cat come out this year? Like the new one? I think it did, right? So three shows? Owl House Season 3, Urusei Yatsura 2022, and Bee and Puppy Cat Lazy in Space? I think. But yeah, we've got some interesting things to talk about. This year was a weird year for me because two shows that I very much enjoyed got remakes this year. So now I get to compare and contrast. And a show I watched growing up got like a spin-off, you know. I still need to watch the final season of Adventure Time. I've never done it. I've never seen the final battle. I've just seen the final song. Anyway, here we go. We're going to start with Bee and Puppy Cat, I guess, because alphabetically... I guess Adventure Time technically comes first. And I did watch these first, so maybe we'll do that. And we'll save the Owl House for last. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay, so let's talk about Adventure Time Distant Lands. I split it into two different ones because I have very different opinions on them. BMO is a C for me. It's not bad. It's definitely worth a watch. But it just... I like BMO as a character, but not enough for this whole episode. They're like 45 minutes long, right? And I feel like I got enough of BMO throughout the regular series. I don't know. It was fun seeing Martin come back. I'm pretty sure that's confirmed, right? It's been this. I watched these at literally the beginning of the year. Yeah, I'm pretty sure at the end we find out that M is Martin, right? Which is Finn's dad, who's kind of a tragic character, but at the same time, like, the worst. I don't know. That was probably the part that caught my interest the most. I didn't really care for the rest of it. Just not my thing. I couldn't get invested in the new characters. You know. Yeah, I'm glad they released this one first, because if it came after the other ones, I'm assuming, I haven't watched Together Forever, but I'm imagining it would not have gone over well. It'd be like the Smash situation, where they released Byleth at the end of the first DLC pack, and right after like a bunch of super hype characters, and then they announced a Fire Emblem character, and so it got way more hate than it probably should have. You know how it is. Anyway, I included BMO specifically because I wanted something in C tier, so there you go. I don't know if anybody will be gracing our illustrious D tier today, but we'll see. Next is Obsidian, and I very much enjoyed Obsidian, partially because the new character wasn't so much slammed in your face. I didn't really care about... Is he Glass Boy, I think? I was going to say Bottle Boy. That's not correct. I didn't really care about him or the rest of the Glass City that much. But they spend enough time like with Marceline on her own that I enjoyed it. And it's nice that after the finale finally got to confirm the whole Marceline and Bubblegum relationship, that we actually get to see it on screen. Finally. Yeah, the music's really good in this one. I don't have much more to say. It's just solid. Solid like Obsidian. Except Obsidian is glass, so... It's volcanic glass, so it's probably not that solid. I actually don't know. Anyway, you get my point. Okay, now I get to talk about two remakes. Well, the original and the remake. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk about why I liked Bee and Puppy Cat. The original run that was all posted onto YouTube. I binge watched the entire thing on one day in like, I don't know, 2016, 2017. That feels about right. And it was okay. The first time. The first time I watched it was like, whoa, that was a cool ending. But I didn't really care for the rest of the series that much. But watching it back again really, with the context of the final episode, watching it back again really made me appreciate it. Because it is pretty chill, and it's got all the pastel colors, and it's just nice and easy to watch. But each of the episodes, when you know the twist, which I'm trying intentionally not to spoil so that you can watch the show, because that's the point of this video, is to recommend you stuff you might not have watched. After you learn the big twist that's at the end of the season, going back and watching through the first few episodes adds a lot, because you're like, oh, that makes so much sense now, and, you know, on and on. And it retroactively improves a lot of the episodes. So, you know, it might be actually bad to have that twist at the end, because if you never watch the show again, you don't get to experience that. But watching it through a second time, I really came to appreciate the show and how each episode was actually important, even though it didn't seem so on the surface. And the new the new season, it doesn't have that so much. I know there's a lot of people that I saw this going around when the show came out on Netflix, right? There's a lot of people that are like, oh, why can't you just enjoy the new show? It's just because you watch the old one and it's not exactly the same, you don't like it. And I went into it thinking, oh, surely this is just people being hyperbolic about stuff. But no, I actually kind of agree. And I don't know if that's a popular or unpopular opinion. But very specifically what they do with Puppy Cat, which sounds hilarious, but what they do with Puppy Cat is, I don't like it. There was this very, the relationship between Bee and Puppy Cat was really the core of the show, right? And there was a very, like, almost sibling relationship, I guess you could say, where, like, they argue all the time about petty things, but at the end of the day, they both care about each other, right? And that's what the heart of the show really is. But one of the episode that annoyed me the most was one where Puppy Cat takes Bee's phone and is spending money on a mobile game and is like going through hundreds of dollars of in-game purchases, and it's funny, right? But at the same time, like, Puppy Cat knows Bee is poor. Like, come on. Whereas, like, the end of the first show, like, the end of the YouTube show, really set up this relationship between them as going on to, like, sort of a different level. Like, it was sort of superficial before. They did care about each other, but they didn't really know anything about each other. And then the last episode, after the twist is revealed, they sort of sit down, and as the credits are rolling, metaphorically, the two of them start just talking about, you know, themselves to each other. It's like, okay, this relationship is going to the next level. Like, they actually are growing to care about each other genuinely. And they want to be there for each other. And the Bee's only friend in town leaves town. So there's like some big status quo changes. And a lot of that is walked back in Lazy in Space. Deckard, the character I'm talking about, who left, is still in the show pretty, like, a lot. And even though he isn't in town, we spend a lot of time hanging out with his family, which I really, really did not anticipate. From the ending of the YouTube show, they all do show up, sort of, in like a smoke cloud. But I did not expect that to be the direction they were going. And it could have been the direction they were planning the whole time. I still wouldn't have liked it. because it really dilutes the story to have like 8 more characters just suddenly in the show, and like, yeah, you care about these guys because they're related to Deckard, right? It's like, not really. I don't know. I just feel like there was a very strong direction presented in the first series, and every episode mattered. And in the Netflix adaptation, the Netflix remake, let's say, because it remakes the first season into like 6 episodes or something, 5 episodes, and then does its own thing. The remade episodes are objectively worse, but that's fine. You can just watch the old ones and then get into the next part of the show. So I'm not even like talking about that. They're objectively worse because they crammed like 10 episodes of show into 6 episodes, so you lose out on a bunch of stuff. I guess I'm going to put it in C. I really didn't enjoy my time, and that's very sad. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. If you've watched the show, maybe you understand what I mean. But it feels like a completely different show than what it did before. And I really liked what it was before, so I don't really jive with this new take. So I've had some time to think about this. It's like 3 a.m. while I'm editing this video. And the reason why I think I don't like Lazy in Space as much as the original is that everything is about lore now. Like, every episode is about building onto the lore of, like, Space Prince, Puppy Cat. And I really I'm a very character-focused individual. I've said this time and time again. And I really enjoyed the little character romps we had with being Puppy Cat's original season. So taking all of that away and replacing it with lore doesn't do much for me. I just, so that's pretty much what I was trying to get across in my rant here about Lazy in Space that I couldn't quite get a grasp on when I was recording this video originally. Okay, back to real time. And hey, are you ready to hear the same points again? I hope so. So, Urusei Yatsura. I started watching this show 2 years ago, I think. That was the first time I watched through like 30 episodes or something of the original run. This is an anime. I wanted to get into anime, right? I think in my 2021 video, I was like, I'm going to watch Cowboy Bebop, and I never did. But I was looking for somewhere to start. And I was recommended this show because apparently it sort of launched a lot of the tropes you see in mainline anime. And I feel like, I think I said this last time too, a lot of the reason I can't get into anime is because I didn't watch it growing up. So, like, I didn't watch Dragon Ball or anything like that. So when I see a trope and other people might be like, oh, here we go, like when you see a clone episode in an American TV show, to me it seems really bland, but a lot of it is probably because it's making commentary on an anime trope that I just am not familiar with, So I wanted to start from the very beginning, essentially, so that maybe I could, come to understand this stuff. So I started with Urusei Yatsura. And, the first episodes had me scratching my head a little bit. The first episode is very bizarre. It essentially revolves around the biggest, like... I can't think of another way to say it, so I'm just going to say it this way. Skirt chaser in the world. Essentially having, like, an alien girlfriend fall into his lap. And he... and he can't, like, appreciate it. That's selling it a little bit short, because most of the actual show is about the absurd scenarios that happen because of this. Like, a regular guy who's like the most unlucky human on the planet, now has this alien girl who's constantly trying to, like, get him to pay attention to her. And because of that, a bunch of alien things start happening to him, right? And that's where most of the comedy comes from. And man, this show can get absurd in the best way possible. I think I'm going to put it in B tier, because it's not quite on the level of these. There are a lot of bad episodes of this show, but it's not a story-driven show, so you can just skip them if you're not enjoying an episode. There's an episode with Dracula in the show. It's not worth watching. Let's just skip over it. But they really have fun with like the mythological creatures. Basically anything you'd see that's like a yokai that becomes like popular yokai for like Pokemon, for example, is in this show, and in a very like satirical take on it. It reminds me of something like a Rick Riordan book in the strangest way, where it's like mythology you're vaguely familiar with, in my case anyway. I'm sure for people that actually live in Japan, they're far more familiar with it. But it's mythology you're vaguely familiar with, viewed through like a modern lens. So like, oh, the gods of luck are a motorcycle gang, all of this stuff. So yeah, it's very fun. And there's some genuinely heartfelt episodes in it as well. It's kind of like, it is a sitcom. It's basically a sitcom. But I like it when I normally don't like sitcoms because it has an absurd premise, essentially. Like, sure, there's really only 3 settings in the show. It's like the main character Ataru's house, and then like an empty lot, and the school. But every time you go there, it never feels the same because, oh, now the school's infested with fairies or the library is enchanted or something. So it's very fun. And Urusei Yatsura 2022 decides to really not do any of that. Like, none of it. And I mean that. It's very focused on the heartfelt moments. Like, it's going... I guess you could say it's more story-driven, quote-unquote. It goes from important moment to important moment with nothing in between. And so I wonder, the people that have never watched the original before, I wonder how you could possibly keep up with it. Because every episode they're introducing another character that, sure, did come to be important in the original run, but like they got 5 episodes at least before the next new character showed up. You know? So it's like, well, maybe not 5 for all of them, but in general, they get a few episodes at least, all to themselves, before you get another character thrown in your face. They don't throw like 3 characters at you at a time usually, which this show does do. Like, it's split into 2 11-minute segments, right? In the first 11-minute segment, they'll give you 1 new character, and then they'll introduce another in the second 11-minute segment. Whereas in the original run, you'd have that whole... This one is also split into 2 11-minute segments. But both of those 11-minute segments would be about this one character. Maybe 2 different scenarios featuring them, but it would be about this one new character. And then they just randomly show up in a few episodes after that, which were more focused on Lum and Ataru, which are the main characters. But this show feels like they're just like rapid firing characters at you. And because there's no space between each of the emotional moments, like the emotional climaxes of seasons, essentially, of the original show, put back to back, it doesn't feel as important, you know? Like the big one for me personally, because this is one of my favorite episodes of the show. Well, actually, I have 2 little anecdotes about episodes I really like that they kind of miss the point of, I think. The first one is an episode where Lum and Ataru, for the first time, actually are like, wow, maybe, you know, Ataru's like, maybe I do love Lum, you know, after all of this running around trying to avoid her. Maybe I do. And it's the Christmas episode. And essentially, Lum saves him from being utterly humiliated by everybody in the class who hates him for being, as they see, like, ungrateful of everything that he's got, when really he's like the most unlucky person in the world, but you know. And so she saves him in this moment, and then he kind of realizes, well, maybe she's not so bad, right? That's essentially the premise of the episode. And in the original, there's a lot of like agonizing about how poorly Ataru treats Lum because he doesn't value her, because he didn't have to work for it, I guess. At the beginning of the episode. And then as the episode goes on and he's trying to, go on this fake date, which they've set up to humiliate him, you start to see that, what he really wants someone who genuinely cares for him. He just doesn't think Lum does. He doesn't believe that she does because, she just showed up one day. He'd never known her before. But when she sticks her neck out for him in this moment and essentially saves him from this burst of humiliation, despite the fact he really doesn't deserve it, that's the moment when he's like, okay, maybe she's not, just trying to manipulate me or whatever. Maybe she actually does care about me. And they share a very nice moment, and the Christmas music is playing, and it's snowing, and it's lovely. And then in the remake, they don't really set up the stakes, essentially. We don't really get the scene where they're really kind of bad at this. I guess because they just assume you already know. You've already watched the original, so you already know. They don't set up Ataru being the worst at the beginning of the episode as strongly. They're doing some other thing where he's just doing yo-yo tricks, which is taken from a separate episode entirely. And ignoring Lum, but he's not downright rude to her, which he is in the original, which is important because it makes Lum's choice a lot more impactful. And then I don't know, it just feels wrong. All right, it doesn't have as much gravitas as the original does because it just kind of skims past all the details. The other episode I want to bring up really fast about this show is there is an episode where essentially everyone's parents are coming to the school for parent-teacher interviews, right? So we've got Ataru's mother, we get to see the rich kid's mother shows up, and we get to see Lum's mother for the first time show up. And due to a tragic misunderstanding, Lum's mother uses an alien machine to turn the rich kid's mother's beloved pet bull into beef soup. And so the two clans, the alien clan and the rich kid's clan, are essentially get embroiled in a war over it. And so there's an extended scene of this ridiculous scenario where this rich family's private military is fighting a bunch of aliens. And it's it's so crazy. And it ends up being resolved by Ataru's mother, who essentially just brings up a roulette wheel and says, okay, well, instead of killing everybody, why don't we do it this way? And we'll just do it by random chance, so it's equal and fair. And so they spin the roulette wheel, but the ball doesn't land on either side's choice. Instead, so because Ataru's mother is essentially the house in this situation, she takes it all and and essentially gets both sides to pay her a bunch of money. And then, of course, they're swimming in cash at their house at the end of the episode, and both the aliens and the private military of the rich kid come and explode their house, and that's how the episode ends, because she cheated them essentially. And this is very funny, obviously. Much funnier when you actually watch it, which I do. I don't remember which episode it is, but it is very fun. I do think, if anything, you should watch that one episode. But it also shows that Ataru and his mother are not that different, despite the fact that, they're always bemoaning how terrible Ataru is. Really, the apple didn't fall far from the tree in this case. So it's sort of ironic, right? That at the beginning of the episode, Ataru's mother's like, oh, I'm so worried about what the teachers will say about my screw-up son. And then she ends up screwing everything up and getting their house exploded. In the remake, none of that happens. Instead, they do a joke about the rich kid trying to interpret his mother's sentences for the alien mother. And she thinks that he's trying to propose to her. And that's it. That's the whole joke. And I'm not saying it's inherently a worse joke, but the way it's presented, especially compared to the original, is so much there's there's so much less there. There's just less. It's just the other joke they fill in space with is about this guy who keeps getting interrupted. And it happens like 6 times to fill up space. But it doesn't have that cohesive start and end, which, makes you go, oh, how ironic. And it doesn't have the density of jokes that the original does. So I don't see the point of it, essentially. That one is probably better than the first example, but the first example hurts me more. So I'm putting this in C tier too. I'm sorry, I didn't want to hate the remakes this year, but I just did. But thankfully, the negativity is over, everyone. The negativity is over. It's time for the Owl House. The last thing I'll say, actually, about Urusei Yatsura is I haven't watched the entirety of the original run because it's like 400 episodes or something. But I have watched most of the episodes that they've adapted so far, so I felt like I could have a decent thought on that. Anyway, the Owl House. I went to check specifically what episode we were on when I ranked the Owl House last year for season 2. And we were on the hiatus between when Luce originally goes through the shoddily constructed portal and meets V and her mother again. That's where we were. And I was like, the show seems to be picking up pretty good. I liked a lot of these episodes. Every episode after that point is literally the best episode of the show. It just keeps getting better and better and better. I do feel like, I will say this, if you don't know the situation behind the show, essentially it got cut short. So season 3 was reduced to 3 extended episodes, which are like 40 minutes long, I think, instead of a full season, which you can definitely feel in the one season 3 episode we have so far, which I did enjoy a lot. It's not really a twist, but the climax at the end of the episode is very sad. And I'm very interested to see where they'll go. I'm glad that Camila gets to come along with everyone, which is Luce's mother. But I have to say I prefer season 2's episodes so far. We only got 1 of season 3, so that's probably why. But Hollow Mind came out this year, and that episode is worth watching the entire show for just to get there. I think. The storytelling in the background of that episode, the actual reveal, and our villain gets to learn about his past, his real past, and the fact that he's not who he seems. The villain that from the very beginning you're like, this guy's probably getting redeemed. And it takes him a while, but he gets there. I think Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door is also in this half of the season, which is crazy. If that's true, then that means Battle of Eclipse Lake, or I think it's just called Eclipse Lake, but the battle is the part that I liked. Eclipse Lake is also in this season, as is the one where they go back in time. Every Sport in a Storm, which is an episode I very much love as well. And literally, I don't think there's an episode that's come out since I ranked this show last that I haven't really, really enjoyed. So for me, the Owl House is the best of the year. I think the Owl House was the best in the year last year too. And that really goes to show that either I should start watching some better shows, but I mean, come on, we've got Obsidian, we've got Adventure Time in here. We got a super long running anime, but the Owl House is just really good. And it is so sad that it took the response to this episode, this first season 3 episode, for the people at Disney to be like, wait, people like this show? Like, what? I think it's pretty clear why. I gotta look this up, actually. Hold on. Okay, Amphibia got 3 seasons. Okay. For some reason, I thought Amphibia got 5 seasons. But they were made around the same time, so it makes sense they'd have the same amount of seasons. But it's so sad that the Owl House got cut short. And it's so suspicious that the Owl House would get cut short if Amphibia was allowed to go to its conclusion. Even though they both have dark themes. I've never watched Amphibia, but I know they both have dark themes. So it's not that. We all know what it actually is. Disney's afraid of the gay. How? How could it be? And it's just so sad. I really want to know what a season 3 of the Owl House would have looked like if it didn't get cut short. Because I feel like this episode is like half the season. It just... it feels like it's... like we were supposed to see the main villain rebuilding his body slowly over time instead of progressively over the course of this episode. And Lou's going to human school again after being in the demon realm for months. There's so much that could have been drawn there that I'm so sad we'll never get to see it. Between this and Infinity Train, I don't know what's wrong about the shows I choose to watch and getting destroyed. For those of you who are fans of Amphibia, just be glad I didn't choose to watch it so you could have the whole story. It's so sad. The last 2 videos I did for animation had Infinity Train in them. And there's no Infinity Train this year because it got obliterated. I guess I can talk about that really quick too because, wow. Okay, hold on. You can't see that, but as soon as I talked about the gay... oh, yeah, well... they know, okay? They know. They're like, oh, he put the Owl House in this quiz. I know what's going on in there. Okay. Let's just talk about HBO Max really fast. It's just so ridiculous. Essentially what happened, I suppose. Because it's not just HBO Max, clearly, because this... the Owl House was on Disney, and similar thing, it got canceled out of nowhere. The pandemic, when it was around, forced companies to A, invest in their streaming services, and B, invest in animation, because they couldn't shoot live action, and it was more expensive to do so, even when they could, during that time. Not maybe more expensive than animation, but more expensive than normal. So animated shows got a lot of glory, let's say. And now that the pandemic is quote-unquote over, and at least, they can shoot without... well, they can shoot movies again. It just seems like they've done a total 180 on animation in general, which is so sad. Because so many shows started during that period that were so good. I think there's a cat in here. One of my cats. I just heard snoring. I was very confused. One of the cats is under the bed snoring away. Anyway, it's just so sad that so many of these shows that showed such promise are getting canceled for basically no reason. Just because the company wants to scale back the things they started because the situation in the world has changed. At least see it out. Like, come on. The loss of the HBO Max stuff is the biggest thing, though. Specifically for me, it's Infinity Train. But I know there were plenty of other shows there that I just didn't get into that are gone now. Like, literally gone. Like they can never be sold or anything again because they've been written off completely. Anyway. I'm happy that we at least get a conclusion for the Owl House, even if it isn't what they had in mind. Because they could have just done what happened with Infinity Train, where there was no way they could realistically tie up every loose end from Infinity Train in season 4. So we just left without resolution. But at least in the case of the Owl House, we'll have something, even if it isn't quite as good as it could have been. Anyway, I think that's enough for this video. You are welcome to disagree with me in the comments. I'd be very interested if anybody on my channel's ever watched Urusei Yatsura. Because it's a show I went into expecting to watch like a few episodes and just get the gist and then, you know, move on to other stuff. And I just kept watching it. So, yeah. And if there's any shows you think I should check out in 2023, I guess you can leave them down below. I'm not going to do One Piece, okay? There's way too many episodes of that. Something short and sweet, probably. I mean, look at the shows that I watched. Other than Urusei Yatsura. Short and sweet. So yeah. Like the video, subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.